All right, YouTube says we're live. I will go ahead and call to order the regular meeting of the City Council for October 4th, 2021. Couple housekeeping items at the top of the meeting. As you all know, Facebook has been down most of the day. It may or may not be up now. We're live on YouTube, so this isn't very helpful to the folks who are looking for us on Facebook, but if you're watching us live on YouTube, we're live on YouTube. With that, I wanted to share some sad news. Former Planning Commissioner Adrian Green has passed away. Mr. Green served on the Planning Commission for approximately 15 years, going back to 2004. There was a stint or two in there that he did not, so it wasn't contiguous. He resigned from his position suddenly last year with an illness, and he's passed away. So I'd like to, as we head into invocation, just take a moment of silence to remember Adrian Green and the service that he's provided to this community. All right, I'll be leading invocation and pledge of allegiance. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity to come together to do the people's business. Lord, please be with the Green family as they grieve, and please comfort them in a way that only you can, Lord. And please grant us the wisdom today to do the people's business, to act in the interest of our communities and represent our residents well. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the next order of business is special guests and announcements. It's always fun to announce the the mayor's employee of the month. And so I'd like to go ahead and do that. And Ariel Smith, who it's a complete surprise, so it's especially fun. Please join me up front. Your family members came in from out of the wing, and again, this was a complete surprise, but we knew you were going to be here, so figured we'd put you on the spot. I have a proclamation naming Ariel Smith as the Mayor's Employee of the Month for April 2021 and declaring October 7th, 2021 to be Ariel Smith Day in the city of Maumelle. Whereas Miss Smith serves as Deputy City Clerk for the city of Maumelle, where she continually goes out of her way to assist citizens and staff members alike. Whereas Ms. Smith began her career with the City of Maumelle in October 2020, ensuring the efficiency of the clerk's office by collecting business fees, helping to keep records up to date, and performing a multitude of other tasks. Whereas Ms. Smith has a positive attitude and has attended numerous workshops and trainings to help her learn the skills to do her job, including being on the forefront of learning new software that will help maintain efficiency with administrative tasks. And whereas Ms. Smith's strong work ethic aligns with the goals of the city clerk's office, and she's proven to be an asset to the city clerk, our city. She's proven to be a hard worker and a reliable staff member. Now, therefore, I, Caleb Norris, Mayor of Maumelle, do hereby declare Ariel Smith to be the Mayor's Employee of the Month for April 2021, and hereby proclaim October 7th, 2021 to be Ariel Smith Day in the city of Maumelle. So. Thank you. Did you want to give a speech now? The city clerk wants me to let you know, Ms. Smith, that you can actually go say hi to your family and stuff if you'd like, and that your absence won't be missed too much. It'll be missed a whole lot, but it's granted anyway. All right, the next order of business is the approval of the minutes for September 20th. Y'all have received a copy of that in the council packet. If there's no discussion on that, I'd entertain a motion to adopt them. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, there was one vote where I think it may have been improperly recorded. We were voting on Ordinance 1037, accepting the annexation of Pinnacle Heights. And it was recorded that council members Mosley and Shin voted no, and I'm guessing, I was thinking I remembered it was Councilmember Holt. So that probably needs to be corrected. Thank you.
You're all right, Councilmember Mosley, I'll get that fixed.
Thank you. I'm assuming that was Mr. Shin's recollection as well? Yes. Okay, and Mr. Holt's. So at this time, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the minutes, provided that they are amended to reflect that Councilmember Mosley and Holt voted no on Ordinance 1037.
So moved. Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, yes?
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Next order of business is public comments. I do not have any public comment cards submitted at this time. Pardon me while I learn YouTube's live. Can we verify that we are going live? Okay. I'm getting warnings. Next item is department reports. Mr. Hogan.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Mike Hogan, Public Works, 600 Cogdale Drive. I don't have a lot to report, but I think I might have a lot to report on with all the rain that we had over the weekend, so kind of crazy. I know Street Department for about the past month and a half has been doing a lot of ditch repair throughout the city. A couple to speak of is Meadow Ridge doing some riprap and some stabilization at the gables behind those apartments as well. I know the ditch behind the gables where the pipes go under the railroad spur, there was a lot of brush that had been trimmed off. I'm not sure if it was energy or the railroad, but we hauled about 5 or 6 dump truck loads of stuff that was kind of jammed up in that waterway. So I don't know if any of this has helped from the rain that we had this weekend, but it couldn't hurt. So also they've been doing concrete work on the Rolling Oaks ditches. They're in pretty bad shape, so I don't know how much they've got done, but we're continuously. Good deal. I'm glad to hear that. So I know there were some pretty big voids and all that, but those are some of the ditch repairs that we've been doing, and also as far as slip line, our pipe rehabilitation, we finished one in Waterside Cove and on what was it? Waterside and something else. But anyhow, we got a few more that we're getting ready to order this year. We got some pipe rehabilitation that we're doing on Hibiscus Drive, which is in somewhat the same area of Lily and Iris and all that. That soil over there is very acidic-y, and the pipes are rusting out, and this is kind of an extension of that. Also, Emerald Drive, Washita Drive, and Lily and Iris Cove are going to be some that we order in this year, but we'll probably do next year. Also, street overlays. Lewis Nelson will be one this year, as well as the striping. Champs Boulevard will be an overlay with striping. Vantage Point, Barber Drive, from Arnold Palmer to Riverwood, I believe. That'll kind of connect that in to where Riverwood and Arnold Palmer was done. Also Millwood, from about Audubon, to almost Blue Mountain. There's a section there that didn't get overlaid, when some of the other parts of Millwood got overlaid a few years ago. Right now, I'm still waiting on prices, for the cart path overlays. Hopefully we'll get about 2,000 feet of overlays on the cart paths behind Club Manor. This will be an extension onto some that we've already done over there, so this will kind of tie that area in as well. And speaking of the cart paths, the trip to Northwest Arkansas, what is that, the Green Belt, the Greenway? Yeah, that was very educational, and I hope Maumelle gets to do some stuff like that, especially on the Club Manor corridor. So, yeah, a lot of fun, a lot of good information. Let's see. That's about all I got for is the streets. I would like to mention the fall cleanup is coming up. September the 11th is when it starts. It'll be running through, October 11th, and be running through October 21st. If you need a schedule or know your area's pickup, call Public Works or go to the city website, and you can get that information there. Also, I know we got a long agenda tonight, so I'll keep this short. I've got a Mack truck that will be on surplus tonight at the end, and yeah, if y'all have any questions on anything, let me know.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, did any water get into the Gables apartments or any houses around Maumelle from that rain the other night?
I don't know of any at the Gables apartments, and I haven't had any calls as far as water getting into any homes. I do know that I haven't had any calls. I'm surprised about it. I don't know if City Hall has or not, but there were certain areas that were pretty bad.
I went down Fountain Blue, and where it comes over the street there by where the golf course. It looked like the water line was above the street, so it was somebody was probably needing to be in a four-wheel drive to go through there.
Yeah, there was a couple places. I know Middle Drive, Town Center. I noticed that it started coming over South Odom by the spillway. Not as high as I've seen it before, but it was coming over, and yeah.
Okay.
Also on Mountain Valley, I know from Phase 19 had some muddy water come down there. It was pretty bad, but I'd like to thank Harper Construction. They did a bang-up job cleaning it up today, or well, actually yesterday. So they were out Sunday cleaning all that up and did a really good job.
All right. Thank you very much.
Just to follow up on that, I drove around the Gables, didn't see anything. This morning I was out walking the path behind the Gables in between the creek, and there were no signs that the water had rose at that location. I did have a lot of fun with Mr. Hogan Saturday night as we got soaking wet, traipsing through puddles.
Lightning and all that good stuff.
It's probably not a good idea to have an umbrella in the middle of a street with lightning, but hey. Any additional questions for Mr. Hogan? All right, thank you, sir. We will move on to the Planning Commission report. Councilmember Tierney.
Thank you. 3 items came before the Planning Commission that will likely be coming before the council sooner or later. The first item was a likely later item. The water treatment plant property at 99 Club Manor was back with a new owner and a new plan, which involves another rezoning request from PRD to PCD and a land use amendment from SUR to SU. The applicant plans to convert the property, which used to be the wastewater plant, to an event center. Immediately obvious problems with the plan is the fact that they would have no parking of their own and would be relying on Maumelle Country Club for all parking and access. Notices have been sent out, no opposition or public concern has been raised, but as everyone here on the council probably remembers, we didn't hear any problems about the last request for a change being made until the weekend before the final vote. We'll have to see what happens on that. The applicant was granted a request to table their motion for 1 month while they finalize an agreement with the country club for shared parking and access and work on a preliminary plat. The second item that was given a do-pass recommendation to the council was Ordinance 94-102 that amends the language to define architectural materials to be used in C4 commercial building design. The third matter dealt with a development known as Fontainebleau Center at 221 Country Club Parkway. This will be a sizable 17,130 square foot building. Previously approved plans made in 2019 were allowed to lapse, and were given a unanimous approval for reactivation. City staff requested changes be made to those plans to accommodate fire truck access and relocation of the sidewalks. Neighbor Andrew Myers, who in full disclosure was a customer of my stores, expressed his concerns about not wanting a sidewalk directly behind his home and concerns about light pollution and recent drainage problem. The contractor assured him that there would be landscaping to shield the homes for privacy. The commission confirmed that lighting would be directed downward and inward to Fontainebleau Center, and that a request had been made to Public Works to deal with the drainage issue. The preliminary development plan, the landscape plan, and the commercial building design were all given unanimous do-pass recommendations.
Thank you, Councilmember Tierney. Next order of business is the procedural motion. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to have all ordinances and resolutions read by title only. Did I hear a second on that? Yes. Awesome. I've got a motion and second to have all ordinances and resolutions read by title only. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. We will move on to unfinished business. First item is the third reading of Ordinance 1044, Amendment to Land Use Plan and Map. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1044, an ordinance amending the Maumelle Land Use Plan and Map and for other purposes.
All right, this is on third reading. It's been read at the last two council meetings. Councilmember Mazzoni.
Yeah, thanks. I brought in I put in that long 10-page issue in the back showing what the impact we've had on the COVID spending from the federal government down to us. It's been pretty significant. And that's what I think impacts is. I like the idea of this development. However, it's on commercial land and we don't have enough of that. As you can see, for just the second quarter alone, this is actual personal income has dropped by almost 30%. Make sure I got it right. Yeah, almost 30%. When they extrapolate and that was due to what's called transfer receipts. That's all the government support given to individuals, not governments like us, but to individuals themselves. It's all the COVID relief. Just that quarter alone, because that pretty much ended it, that shows a net loss of $16 billion for a whole year, if it was through that, of extra money that was given to each your average household. That is why our sales tax revenue is so high right now. We've spiked at 120% over personal income for the state of Arkansas. That's gone now. So we can't count on that money in the future. Now, it's going to probably take some time for all that money to get through. So we should hopefully see a higher than normal sales tax revenue for a while, but it won't last forever. We've got a lot of bills coming up just for, as the mayor pointed out before, 330,000, I think, for for healthcare for next year, as well as 100,000 for the county jail for 2021.
100,000 to 100,000 increase.
Increase. Yeah. So that's already $430,000 increase before we even look at any other expenses that we have, and we've got to increase our salaries.
So that will also come as a hit. We can't keep taking out commercial land. No, it's not going to affect this year, but the more we take out, that's the less we have. And though I love the idea of this, sadly, the demographic in there, it spends the least except for the 25 and younger. So we're taking out what could potentially be our highest revenue producing and replacing it with the lowest in long term. And we've got to hit this at some point, because we are getting to the point where if we don't change this cycle, we are going to be in some problems fiscally. So, that's it for me, that we've got to change this around. We have to look at it. We have to realize this is coming. Yes, we've grown. Our population has grown. We keep talking about the last census too, so much in the last 10 years. But at the same time, our cost to support that added population has increased greater than the revenue. 10 years ago, at the start of this, we had $1 million budget surplus every year. The last few years, we've been at a deficit. That's not going to change by adding more residential that brought us to this in the first place. Thanks.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with what Councilmember Mazzoni said. We do have to be very careful about building more residential or even taking on any more residential. That's why I voted against the annexation of those residentials the last couple of meetings. I am going to probably vote yes on this one tonight, mainly because my constituents in that area they all are interested in having that go in there. They think that's much better than possibly an alternative down the road of some multifamily housing or something like that. I've struggled with this because of what Mr. Mazzoni says, but I am going to vote yes on this tonight. I do have some questions though, so that's predicated on the answers to these questions here. I wanted to ask who currently owns the land, if it's owned by O'Reilly's or the Wells brothers. I'd like to know when you expect to start construction, if this goes through. And I'd also like to know the burden to the police, fire, and ambulances that are expected from having a age-related facility there.
Is there a representative of the applicant that would like to answer those? Or multiple representatives for different parts of those questions? Come on down if you could just state your name, address.
Yeah, I'll just start. Grant Cox, 3 Huntington, Little Rock, Arkansas. And on behalf of the applicant, we've got a number of people here to answer your questions, just in case there are any, including Scott Allman, who's the architect for the project, Stephanie Harris with Arrow Senior Management, who is the operating partner of the project, and Brian Dale with White and Associates as far as the civil engineering. So they should be able to answer those, and I may come back to answer a few of the other questions. But I think first we can start with plans for construction and everything like that.
Thanks, Grant. Scott Allman, SWD Architects, 315 Nichols Road, Kansas City, Missouri. The first process we need to get through is the zoning process. Then we can apply for our state licensing and get that ball rolling with the state. The state won't grant us approval on a proposed plan until we have a viable piece of property that we can show to them that the city and community is in support of. So right now, the way things are going right now is we're looking at a November submission to the state for our licensing and review of those plans. And they generally come back in February of 22 with whether or not the project will be approved from the state licensing standpoint. After that, we will begin working on construction documents, and that's generally going to be about an 8 to 9 month period. So we're looking at completion of plans probably fourth quarter of 22, and then possible start of construction first quarter of 23. And generally, the construction period is going to be about 18 months.
Okay, have you already bought the land?
Wells Brothers owns the land. I'm Brian Dale, Joe White and Associates. Wells Brothers owns the land. O'Reilly does have it under contract, and Scott Wells was here at the Planning Commission meeting to show his support for the project. He's the seller and wouldn't have put it under contract if he didn't like the use. So he still owns it, but it is under contract to O'Reilly.
Okay, and the exchange would be after all the permits go through and that sort of thing?
After the state grants their license and after they receive approval of everything else, they would remove their conditions on the contract and close on the property.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that,
And Councilmember Moses, can you repeat your final question? I think it was with regards to emergency.
yeah, what is I'm trying to figure out what the impact might be on our emergency response people here. This will be an age-related thing. I'm guessing there will probably be a lot of ambulances called there over time, and just want to know what the burden is going to be on the city of Maumelle.
Right. And that's one of the things I know Councilmember Bizzoni brought that up, and I've actually talked to a number of people at MEMS, and in fact talked to a partner of mine, Joey Price, who's also on the board. And to be honest, it is a very convoluted formula to try to anticipate, how costs increase or anything like that, because there are a number of factors that go into that. One of those being the overall approach on the vehicles and how they're used, whether they're in service, and whether those services are reimbursable, and that impacts cities. But another issue that I think that is relevant in this situation, especially with a development like O'Reilly's proposing, is that a lot of the residents that are going to be in this independent living and eventually in assisted and are already residents of Maumelle. So if you were having an emergency management call to one house in Maumelle, well, now they're just going to O'Reilly. It's not necessarily having a huge increase. It's just changing the address where that management goes. But there's also a change in that. And Stephanie, if you could address that too, just how it's been addressed.
Yes. Stephanie Harris, Arrow Senior Living. You bring a great point in asking about the services. This isn't the first time that it's come up in this type of a setting, questioning, will this have an impact on city services and EMS calls? The design of the community will include a technology that has a predictive component to fall management. Or it can, within 30 days, based on somebody's gait, anticipate the risk of fall and create the opportunity for intervention. It is a unique design that O'Reilly builds in each of its communities and is a leader in the industry in this new technology modernizing senior living services. And we, in fact, had a similar comment at a council hearing a couple years ago, and the fire chief said 2 years later to us, we hardly have any calls from your community. Now, it's inevitable that we will face calls, but the intention of the community by bringing people in, getting services where they might be neglecting at home or not getting all the services that they need at home, by ensuring that they're getting proper meals and proper support to their activities of daily living, plus this addition of the technology that's in each of our assisted living communities, and that we have an additional intervention we use in our independent living. It's a win-win for us to save money for our residents, to live as long as they can in our community at the lowest possible rate, and to augment their quality of life. And we found that this technology is critical. It's called Foresight, and we use also another complementary technology called VirtueSense. Both have a direct correlation to reduce falls, which is the #1 call for all EMS for aging needs for seniors. Falls are the #1 call.
Did that answer your questions, Mr. Mosley?
Well, I've got a little bit of comfort, and I've got a little bit more discomfort, actually, as far as the timing. My biggest fear on something like this is it would take it to PRD, which would allow multifamily housing here in Maumelle. And if for some reason you don't get your licensing, an apartment developer may approach the Wells family and buy that land and put in apartments. And so that's my biggest concern here, since you're not ready to just get going right away. Go ahead.
If I can speak to that, and I may let Scott Grummer come up as well. Our PRD is specific to this use, which is the independent living, the assisted living, and the memory care. I believe, and Scott may correct me, but if this development didn't happen and another user came in, this PRD is specific for this use, that if they were going to go to multifamily or any other type of development, they would have to come back to the commission as well as the city council.
Mr. Grummer, you've been summoned, sir.
I'm putting you on the spot.
So the approved development plan that they're asking for goes with the land, so even in land transfer, that development plan stays with that. They would have to come back through the planning commission and city council with a new approved plan if somebody wanted to develop something else. But within a PRD, you are allowed multifamily.
Okay, so by right, there would be multifamilies. Somebody could come back and present that.
If you're willing to approve a development plan for that, but like I said, if the property transfers ownership, then the approved plan with this O'Reilly Senior Living would actually go with the land and stay with it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to change I am going to be a no vote just because I'm worried about that. And otherwise, I think you all have a very fine development, and I think the residents down there would like it. So, but that's my concern. If there's any way you can alleviate that, if this fails tonight, I'd be willing to look at it from a different standpoint. Thank you.
Councilmember Holt.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Taking nothing whatsoever away from the organization, I know it has all the credentials and it will have expert care and the very finest living quarters that the people could possibly get. Looking at my own age, my white crown tells me I'm certainly in that category. I don't mean to, well, anyway, and so, but anyway, I look at myself and I think that while on one hand this is a good cause in and of itself, we're correct. There's only so much land here in Maumelle. We almost never, the only time that I can remember that we have actually turned down an opportunity for a residential that was actually commercial was one here recently on Club Manor Drive. And I think we all got surprised and we all voted against it. But there is only so much, and once we just slowly whittle away, all of a sudden it's all gone. There is no more property. We can't build anything else. At the risk of saying the wrong thing, but this is not a charity organization. This is a for-profit organization. And I have had experience already that the expense of my deceased mother-in-law, I was staggered by her monthly expense. I pray God at the age of 84 that I will not ever enter an establishment. I don't know where the money is going to come from. But at any rate, we have already pre-existing or the rest homes for people to live in. We have several already. I don't know if we have a shortage for them. Is this a 24 care agency or is this a assisted living?
Yes. So this is, the answer is kind of a combination of yes. This would be the only community in the city of Maumelle that has both independent living, assisted living, which has the 24-hour care, and memory care. We can't build the assisted living without the state saying there is a need and verifying that there is a need in this area that it is underserved. There are actually very few underserved cities, and Maumelle is one. And so that is partly, that is the driver as to why we want to fulfill that need in this community.
Okay. Well, I mean, it is what it is. Like I say, it increases the need for every kind of service that we can think of for that area. I have no doubt it's probably going to pass, but I would have to, I think we've gone far enough with it now that it's difficult. I mean, there's nothing lower ranking than a city council member, ladies and gentlemen, but I have to vote one way or the other. And I have a responsibility to my constituents in this city. So I struggle with myself to know what to do. I don't depend on everybody else's vote to tell me what I should do. So we'll go from there. Yes, sir.
And I certainly appreciate that, Mr. Holt. One of the things that I'd kind of like to address is the general idea that about this, kind of taking away some of the commercial space. I think that, or potential commercial space, and I certainly can understand that general feeling when you see that this is a residential facility that has an independent living component, but it's more of a blended space and a blended use. There are components in there that while it's a service that we think that the residents of Maumelle would be nice to give the option to, I certainly know that that's a huge struggle for everybody to make that determination as to whether to leave their home to go into an independent living setting and doing that. But I've also, just in my family and in a lot of friends' families, I know that a lot of times when people do make that choice, some people have really thrived in that it can kind of take somebody who's been isolated when they haven't had the ability to move around anymore, whether it's the inability to drive cars. It puts them in a community with people that are that they've known for their lives. And that's one of the things about being in Maumelle, too, is that it allows for those residents in Maumelle to choose a facility located in Maumelle so that they're going to be close to their friends that they've had here all their lives, their family, and they're not having to go outside somewhere else to find similar amenities. Going back to how it's sort of blended, not only, most of the time if you're talking about a multifamily or residential facility, you may create one job as a property manager. Stephanie, I think that they were looking at this. We said 2 weeks ago that we thought it was about 35, but I think it's actually more, closer to 60? 63 jobs. Now, some of those aren't full-time, but 63 jobs. Also, in the center itself, there's the ability that there will be some sales tax involved. There's a salon component where people will, can go and pay. There's also meal facilities, so people do have guests come in and eat at the facilities as well, so there's also that component. So it's not just residential, it's more of a blended, so it does offer that commercial aspect as well.
Thank you. Was there any additional discussion? Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I did notice one of my constituents from that area came in late after the meeting started, and I just wanted to ask if you could open it up to if anybody, one of the constituents wanted to share their thoughts, that would be great.
I'd entertain a motion to open the floor for public comments. So, got a motion, second. All those in favor, yes?
Yes.
All opposed? No. Motion carries. The floor is open for public comments. Come on down.
Guess not. Thank you.
Can't say you didn't try.
Yep.
Councilmember Shin?
Having gone through some of this with my own family recently and the history that I have in this, I agree with you on general residential. I disagree with you on senior housing because at this point in time, the seniors have $1.6 trillion to spend. They spend $1,800 online at Christmas average. That's revenues that they will generate. So because this is a senior facility, I'm going to give this my support because I don't see it as a hindrance. Now, if it were just an apartment complex, or if it were gonna be 50 houses, I would agree with you. But because this is senior, they spend their money closer. You know, they may be spending it at Walmart instead of Kroger, time will tell, but they will spend it close to home, they will eat close to home. I've been through this with my ex-mother-in-law, I've been through this with my mother. I had a great aunt that when they took her out of her home and put her in assisted living, she thrived. She learned new games. A lot of her mental faculties came back. And so, personally, I'm in support of this.
Thank you, sir. Any additional discussion on ordinance 1044? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 1044.
So moved.
I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mosley?
No.
Councilmember Saunders?
No.
Councilmember Mazzoni?
No.
Councilmember Gardner?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams? Councilmember Tierney?
Yes.
Councilmember Shin?
Yes.
Councilmember Holt?
No.
The vote is 4-4, motion fails. Next item of business is ordinance 1045. Madam City Clerk, if you could read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1045, an ordinance amending the Maumelle zoning map and for other purposes.
All right, this is the zoning map to the land use amendment that just failed. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 1045.
So moved.
We've got a motion. Do I hear a second? Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? I'm in roll call vote, so if you've hit your button, let me know. All right. Madam City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mosley?
No.
Councilmember Saunders?
No.
Councilmember Mazzoni?
No.
Councilmember Gardner?
No.
Councilmember Williams? Councilmember Tierney?
No.
Councilmember Shin?
No.
Councilmember Holt?
No.
Ordinance 1045 fails. The next item of business is Resolution 2021-24. This resolution is the preliminary development plan for the development on the last two ordinances. This was tabled at a previous meeting so as to be voted on after the zoning and land use amendment had occurred. I will go ahead and open this up for discussion. Or, pardon me, have you already read it? Okay, if I could, Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Yes, sir. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2021-24, approving the preliminary development plan for O'Reilly Senior Community Edition.
All right, and entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 2021-24.
So offered.
I've got a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion and second to adopt Resolution 2021-24, approving the preliminary development plan for the O'Reilly Senior Community Edition. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes. All opposed, no.
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 Motion fails. Resolution 2021-24 fails. With that, we will move on to the third reading of Ordinance 1043, adopting provisions for sick leave accrual. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, Pulaski County, Arkansas. Ordinance number 1043, an ordinance of the City of Maumelle, Arkansas, adopting provisions for the police officer sick leave accruals and for other purposes.
All right, this is on third reading. Just an overview. This increases sick leave for police. Y'all may require that this ordinance and the work leading to it required the city to work with our legislators to change the state law. The state law was amended, and therefore I'd like to advocate that we do go ahead and increase the sick leave. And just for those that don't know, we've already increased the amount paid of sick leave paid at retirement, and so this would just allow them to accrue more sick leave. Councilmember Tierney?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 1043.
I've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on ordinance 1043? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Holt,
Yes.
Councilmember Shin,
Yes.
Councilmember Tierney,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams, Councilmember Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Mazzoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Saunders,
Yes.
Councilmember Mosley.
Yes.
Motion passes. Ordinance number 1043 is adopted. With that, we will move on to the second reading of Ordinance 1046, amending City Code Section 94-353. Madam City Clerk?
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Ordinance Number 10, I'm sorry, I'm going to start over. Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1046, an ordinance amending Sections 94-353 of the Maumelle City Code to change multifamily residential uses as permitted in the R3 district from a permitted use in a C2 district to a conditional use in a C2 district and for other purposes.
Thank you. That's a long title. Good job. Just quick overview. This is the ordinance making C3 instead of in a C2 zone, R3 is no longer a use by right. It'll be a conditional use if this passes. Is there any discussion on ordinance 1046? Councilmember Holt.
Mr. Mayor, could we ask the Director of Planning and Commission to approach the podium, please?
The Director of Planning and Permits is running back into the room. Mr. Grummer, we're on 1046, ordinance amending 94-353 to make R3 a conditional use in C2 zoning. And Councilmember Holt?
Yes, sir. Thanks, Scott. Let me go back to that title again of where it was. I want to reread that part of it.
I blew it up for you, sir.
This is a resolution.
Oh.
Yeah, the ordinance itself where it explained what the change from R3 to. Right, okay, there you go, sorry.
Wait a minute. I'll get it for you, Councilman. Here you go.
Right, that's what I wanted.
Okay.
I just wanted to get this clarified, if I might, please, because I don't understand it, is my deal. That uses as permitted in the R3 district from a permitted use in C2 district to a conditional use in C2 district and for other purposes. What is the technical definition or condition of conditional use? What is the difference of conditional and not conditional?
So in the C2 zone, which is a commercial zone, it allows for multifamily by right. So what this does is it changes it from multifamily by right to multifamily by conditional use, which means that in order to get a multifamily approved in a C2 district with this change, they would have to bring forward a site plan and get that site plan approved by both Planning Commission and City Council. And you would have the option of approving that conditional use for multifamily or denying that multifamily conditional use. The reason why we brought this forward was because there was concerns in some of the rezonings that had happened with the use of potential conditional of multifamily, but this gives a little bit more option to the City Council to determine how you want that to be in different areas. It also does allow for a mix of use. Within our C2, you could have multifamily and commercial mixed together, but there's no limitation on how much multifamily or how much commercial. So we saw this as kind of a quasi way of looking at a mixed-use area and be able to allow that to happen both in our town center areas.
So what would make them, if I might ask one more question, make them qualified that they have to present their plan and everything to you? Is there some kind of limitations or restrictions that they have to fit inside in order to qualify for that? Or is it just general that, again, it's multifamily, so you're talking about an apartment complex instead of just an individual home?
Well,
Did I say that right?
It's R3, which is high-density residential. It's not single-family.
Mr. Holt, maybe, and to the council, maybe this will help. So if a use is permitted by right, so let's say something is zone C2, commercial 2, it's our middle tier commercial district. Currently, it allows R3, which is apartments. So if any area is zone C2, commercial 2, can also put apartments there by right. There's no sort of determination as to whether those apartments are a good fit in that particular area or not. If you move it to conditional use, it'll go through the conditional use process, which requires an extra approval or recommendation from the Planning Commission, and then approval from the council. I believe the city attorney had pulled up some of that.
I did. I was just looking to go ahead and pull up like the factors that come into place for a conditional use as opposed to a use as of right. When you're looking and evaluating whether a conditional use is appropriate, the code section that sets those out is 94-98, and there are 9 of them. You look at how if the proposed use is so designated, located, and proposed to be operated that the public health, safety, and welfare would be protected. You would look at whether the proposed land use is compatible with and will not adversely affect other property in the area, whether the proposed use is within the provision of conditional uses set out in the regulation. So is it within the spirit, I guess, the spirit of the law as well as the letter of the law, whether the proposed use conforms to all applicable provisions of this chapter for the district in which it is to be located, and the use facilitates public convenience at that location. You look at the size and shape of the site, including the size, shape, and arrangement of proposed structures and whether it's in keeping with the intent of the chapter. You look at the internal street system, ingress, egress, proposed off-street parking, loading, and pedestrian ways, and whether they're adequate and in compliance with city policy in this chapter. You would review safeguards proposed to limit noxious or offensive emissions, including lighting, noise, glare, dust, and odor. You would look at proposed landscaping and screening and whether they meet the requirements of Chapter 70, whether there's a need for increased landscaping as needed. And then you would also look at open space screening and fencing and whether that'll be maintained by the developer or the property owners association, and whether any signage would be appropriate for the area. So it's a pretty rigorous set of criteria that you would look at in evaluating whether a conditional use is appropriate in a certain area, as opposed to just a use as of right, which wouldn't have to come before the Planning Commission or the council.
So we're not talking about a specific piece of property here at this point. It's just a general condition. If something in the future it would apply to.
Yes, sir.
So if you had a project that was that type of multifamily residential in that particular type of commercial zone, it would have to go through that additional process that I just discussed.
Right.
For everybody to really carefully consider whether it's actually compatible with the surrounding area and whether the design is going to, not cause additional traffic concerns or other things that would be a nuisance to the community.
Okay. Councilmember Mosley, did you have something to add?
I was going to, when it's a conditional, we're under no obligation to approve it. Is that correct?
Well, you're under the obligation to apply those factors. So, I mean,
Okay.
you would again, you would need to have a basis,
Yeah.
based on those factors of whether you, for a reason you felt it was not in the best interest of the community. But, that's in the council's judgment.
I think this is something we want, unless I'm missing something here, because what it does is it gives us more control over whether multifamily housing is going to be built in a certain area. Right now, if somebody were to apply for C2 zoning, they could, get it, and then they say, oh, we don't want to do anything commercial after all, we'd rather build multifamily, and they could do so by right. But if there's a condition, if there's a conditional use in there, we can deny it. So I think, and this is something we want. Mr. Mazzoni or somebody else can correct me if I'm wrong. Thank you.
Mr. Grummer?
And I just had one other thing to add. In looking at those conditions, you may say that you want to keep commercial in a certain area, but understanding the value of a residential component, you could require commercial on the lower level with residential on the upper level, which again provides opportunity for that mixed use, and you can keep the residential component for potential revenue.
Councilmember Williams?
So, my property in Little Rock, we have a conditional use, and we have to go through the conditional use permit process every 5 years. So we could, we as the city council, we would approve the conditional use based on those conditions. And I suppose that we could put a time limit on that conditional use. So the condition for mine is if I lose my Bureau of Prisons contract, I no longer have zoning. I no longer have that conditional use. When I go, it goes with me. And we have voted for this before. If y'all remember the lady on Blue Mountain that had the storm shelter built in her front yard, and she was granted a conditional use to keep that storm shelter. And I think when they move, they have to take that with them based on that condition. So it just gives us a little bit more teeth and a little bit more authority over what goes in that particular zoning area.
Madam City Attorney?
I did just want to echo what Councilmember Williams was just saying, and there's another section following the one that I just read on conditions being binding, and it states, once any portion of the conditional use authorization is utilized, all such conditions pertaining to such authorization shall become immediately operative. The violation of any condition so imposed shall constitute grounds for revocation of the conditional use authorization. So, again, placing conditions on it. Such conditions may include time limits for exercise of the conditional use authorization. Otherwise, any exercise of such authorization must commence within 60 days. No conditional use authorized by the Planning Commission or the City Council shall be subsequently submitted to the Board of Zoning Adjustment for variances. Amendments or changes to a conditional use authorization must follow the same process as the original conditional use. No building permit shall be issued except in conformance with the provisions of this article. So conditional uses generally follow the owner. So if it changes ownership, that conditional use may no longer be approved.
Right.
Councilman, pardon me, Councilmember Williams, you still have the floor.
And I do agree with Councilmember Mosley. This is something that we need.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, we approve conditional a lot of times on churches. A lot of times they want to put a church in an area and it requires a conditional, and it would be the same type of deal. I do remember the storm thing. I think that was a variance, so I don't know that was conditional. I don't know if anybody else remembers that, but it was done about 4 years ago, something like that.
Before I came here, I came in support of it, and it was if I remember right, I do think it was a conditional use.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, this is on second reading. If there's any additional discussion, we can have it now. If there's any confusion, I'm sure Mr. Grummer would be more than happy to over-explain everything to you to where you will be a master in giving lectures at the next council meeting. All right, we'll move on to, we will move on to new business. First item of new business is Resolution 2021-29. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas. A resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2021-29, approving the preliminary development plan for Fountain Blue Center, Lot 2RR Athletic Club Addition.
Thank you. This is, Mr. Grummer, I believe this is 100% the same plans that were submitted and approved last time. Means probably not 100%. So now that I've asked the questions, what were some of the meaningful changes, Mr. Grummer, that you remember off the top of your head?
You want me to over-explain that or under-explain that?
You know, I shouldn't have said over-explained. I should have said very thoroughly explained.
Just minor changes. Removes a loading zone in the rear for emergency ingress, egress, some landscape changes in the front to accommodate swells, and that's about it. And then the move of a dumpster from the west side of the property to the east side to get it away from the residential to reduce the impacts.
Great. I know that was an issue that was brought up previously. Other than that, this was approved. Thank you, Mr. Grummer, for the perfect explanation. This was approved. It expired. They expire after a year, and so we're back. Councilmember Gardner.
Motion to adopt Resolution 2021-29.
I've got a motion and a second, but I still have some comments. So, Councilmember Mosley.
Yeah, I attended the Planning Commission meeting, and I know there were some promises, I think, made to the homeowners as far as vegetation and sidewalks and all those things. I think they were all addressed, and it's all on tape, so we'll, I think we're good to go on this. This is the kind of thing I want to see. I want to see us building some retail in a commercial zoned area. So I'm probably a yes vote on this. Thank you.
Yeah, there was another comment. It has disappeared. So with that, if there's no further discussion, we have a motion second to adopt Resolution 2021-29. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Next item. The next item of business is Resolution 2021-30, a resolution certifying the taxation rate for the year 2021. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, Pulaski County, Arkansas. Resolution number 2021-30, a resolution certifying to the Pulaski County, Arkansas County Clerk the rates of taxation to be levied by the City of Maumelle on taxable real and personal property within the City of Maumelle, Arkansas for the tax year 2021 and for other purposes.
So first of all, I should be crystal clear, this does not raise taxes at all. This is the annual resolution that we're required to submit to the county clerk stating what the current rate of taxation is. Those rates have not changed this year, and so this is just telling the county clerk what those rates are. Is there any discussion on this? If there is none, I'd entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 2021-30. I've got a motion from Councilmember Holt and a second. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Next order of business is Resolution 2021-31, a resolution to set a date for a petition hearing. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2021-31, a resolution to set October 18th, 2021 as the date of the hearing on the petition to form the City of Maumelle Properties Owners Multi-Purpose Improvement District Number 2021-17 of Maumelle, Arkansas, the Pinnacle Heights, and for other purposes.
Madam City Attorney?
Yes, no matter how many times you read something, it's when you hear it in a council meeting that you realize you didn't make all of the corrections you needed to. It's actually gonna be November 1st after I reviewed this, statute, and I've had many conversations with the attorneys, and, I noted that it needed to be between 30 and 60 days from the date of the petition. We had originally thought we would try to do this on October the 18th, but it will be November 1st. So please note that the text includes November 1st, but the title should have been changed as well.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on Resolution 2021-31? Councilmember Gardner?
I was just gonna ask if we need to make any motions to correct that, or is it okay as is, or should we correct it?
Let's go ahead and correct it. I don't think it's something that will need to anything more than just a Scrivener's error correction, but let's go ahead and move to amend if someone would.
I've got a motion to amend the title of Resolution 2021-31 to state November 1st, 2021 in the title instead of October 18th, 2021. Did I hear a second?
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Any additional discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, and we're voting on the amendment to the title. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. I'll open up the floor to discussion on 2021-31. Councilmember Mosley?
Okay, this is the kind of thing we've seen before, is that correct? This is basically setting up an entity for, that will, various utilities, sewer, and that sort of thing, the expenses of that will be rolled into a legal entity to be paid off by the future purchasers of the property, of the lots and things like that. Is that correct? Is that what we're looking to do here? Is that what they're wanting to do here?
Madam City Attorney?
So I think yes is probably the short answer to that question.
Okay.
A special improvement district is different than like a property owners association because the costs that are associated with that are going to be assessed with your taxes as opposed to, just paying dues to an organization on an annual basis. This particular development, they have several different things proposed, including, some parks for that area that I don't believe they intend to dedicate to the city, and I think maybe a swimming pool. So there'll be some things like that this is intended to cover as well.
Okay. Now, why is it that some developers go this route and that some developers they bear all these costs themselves and try to recoup it through the sale of their lots? I mean, we have some neighborhoods that don't do this. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. I'd say most that come in aren't doing that. I'll save speculation as to why. I can tell you one thing that's beneficial to the city is when there's an improvement district like this, it's a much stronger, I see it as a much stronger form to ensure that those common properties are maintained. So in this case, I believe and I don't want to get into the meat of what they're asking too much at this point, but I think they're wanting a clubhouse, they're wanting these issues that when we have plenty of POAs that fade away, or don't fully operate, and some that exist only on paper, but they don't actually meet. The improvement districts, they've got a little bit more authority than a POA does. I could understand why certain residents would not want to be a part of that. But I'll leave the speculation or because it'd be speculation on my part if I had guessed why they did that.
Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is this the same thing. There was a developer that came into Maumelle back in 1989, and they built several neighborhoods. I think Waterside was one. where there were special improvement taxes on the various houses. They didn't have clubhouses and that sort of thing. There wasn't a POA, but there was an improvement district set up, and they collected special improvement district taxes from the residents to pay off the cost of that. I don't know if it's done with bonds or what, but the idea, usually, I think the developers do this to basically cut their costs of development and pass them on to the future homeowners, just for profit. But what bothers me about that example is that future property owners, a lot of times they don't understand what special improvement taxes are. They don't realize what they're doing. And some of those went bad. I think Waterside was a problem where the residents had to take it over, and it was a god-awful mess. So I'm looking for ways not to convolute things for future residents. And so if this is more being set up as a POA for clubhouses and things like that, then I guess I wouldn't be objected to that. But if it's to roll all these things in and leave future homeowners burdened with future taxes over something that most developers wouldn't do, then I would object to that.
Got you. And just to be clear, you're using the term taxes. This wouldn't be a city entity, right? It'd be private. I think
Right.
the fee is just paid or assessed with the taxes. It's not anything that comes to the city or the like. Nonetheless, just a reminder, this is the resolution that would set the date for the public hearing. I would anticipate at that public hearing that some of the questions you're asking about motive would be ripe for discussion.
And there will be an ordinance. So
Okay.
that's what you'll actually vote on. And the public hearing will be the first reading of that ordinance so that you can get all that input as you're having the discussions on the ordinance going forward. They're also they're private commissioners for a special improvement district where you're going to have some property owners who are going to still have input, I guess, kind of like a property owners association would. It's just the collection mechanism is different.
Okay. All right. In that case, I'm not going to object too much tonight, but I'll learn more between now and then. Thank you.
And hopefully at the public hearing, we'll learn
Yes.
something. That's a good time to do that. I don't believe we yet have a motion to adopt Resolution 2021-31. I've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries. The public hearing will be November 1st. Mike cuts out right when I say the date. With that, we'll move on to the first reading of Ordinance 1047, the franchise agreement with Unite Private Networks, LLC. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, and ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1047, and ordinance authorizing Unite Private Networks, LLC, its successors, and assigns to construct, maintain, and operate a communications network within the City of Maumelle, Arkansas, levying a franchise tax, approving a license agreement, and for other purposes.
All right, and so I won't restate what the city clerk just said, but we have, y'all have received a copy of the tentative license agreement. I believe we have a representative from UPN, Mr. George Rutledge. Are you here? Yes. Would you mind coming down to the microphone and just telling the council what's going on here, sir? What y'all are wanting to do, and welcome to the council meeting? I'm not saying you should welcome the council members to the meeting. I was welcoming you.
As a company, we're looking to deliver high-speed voice and data via fiber optic cable to customers in the city, business customers, sorry about that. No cable TV attachments or anything like that, so.
Great. All right. Okay, so go ahead and open the floor to discussion on Ordinance 1047. Whoa. Councilmember Mosley.
So this is business only?
Yes, sir.
Business customers only is
Yes, sir.
all you're interested in?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are there other people doing similar things here in Maumelle?
AT&T,
Okay,
Windstream, Fidelity, but obviously they're more cable slanted as well, where we would be just voice and data.
okay. So you're here to compete for business customers?
Yes,
then?
sir.
All right. That's all I've got for now. See if somebody else has something.
Whoa, there were 4 lights on and I looked away. I guess there are no addition, Councilmember Gardner?
You sounded disappointed, so I thought I'd bring mine back. No, just one of the things that, I think you answered this, sir, that you wanted to provide business services. Councilmember Scott, when she was on the council, had a lot of experience in telecom, and one of the questions that I was gonna ask was whether or not you were gonna actually be doing business in Maumelle versus just using our right-of-ways to pass through from one area to another. Councilmember Scott had mentioned that before, that we were allowing people to dig up our right-of-ways, but we weren't actually collecting sales taxes because they were just using us to get from North Little Rock to Conway. But it doesn't sound like that's what you're doing.
It will, in essence, be a mixture of both.
Sure, okay. But you are planning on offering services?
Yes, sir,
Okay.
100%.
Okay. Are you gonna be tapping into some existing fiber?
No, sir, we'll build our own fiber optic network.
Where's it gonna connect through?
When you say connect.
Well, I mean, where are you going to tap into the fiber from? Do you have an existing
We are
network
our
somewhere?
own company, and we'll build our own network to whatever customer sites
Okay,
are willing to sign up for our services.
okay. All right, thank you.
All right. If there's no further discussion, this will be on second reading at the next council meeting. Thank you, Mr. Rutledge.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I would like to ask your opinion. Is this something you support?
Yeah, so we had a Zoom call with some of the representatives, engineers. They're targeting, yes, it's supposed to serve parts of the industrial park, commercial. They're looking for folks that use a lot of data. We have to give an example, we have a project that's looking very seriously at coming to Maumelle. One of the things they wanted was data redundancy, and they didn't want it even through the same company. They wanted multiple routes into their site, and they wanted multiple companies providing that service in case some data went down. They wanted a backup to be able to use. City Hall has 2 different providers of internet, one that we only use, and it's really sort of scaled back in the event that the primary goes out. For a lot of industries and commercial schools, having a constant connection to data is vital, not just to maintain continued operations throughout the day, but to make sure the system doesn't collapse so that when they do open back up in those situations that they're good to go. Yeah, so based on those and that reasoning was why I agreed to bring this to the council.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. If there's no further discussion, we will move on to the next item of business, which is the first reading of Ordinance 1048 to attach and incorporate annexed territory into Maumelle. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1048, an ordinance to attach and incorporate annexed territories into a ward of the City of Maumelle and for other purposes.
All right, this basically takes those 2 areas that were recently annexed into the city and places them into a ward. So I'll go ahead and open the floor to discussion. If there is none, this will be on second reading at the next city council meeting. Going once, going twice, sold. We'll move on to the first reading of Ordinance 1049, amending Section 94-102 of the Maumelle City Code. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1049, an ordinance amending Section 94-102 of the Maumelle City Code to change the commercial building design criteria to include architectural metals as a design element to require all commercial design requirements in any area zoned C4, highway or commercial, and for other purposes.
Great, thank you. One of the things that I like is that our code does have some design standards for commercial buildings. Unfortunately, when you go ahead and list specific materials, what happens is decades go by, and sometimes the material that we would have thought of as high quality or low quality can change. We've actually had, in some instances recently, people coming in and wanting to use architectural metal for their designs, which in some cases was a higher class and a higher grade material than what we forced them to use because of what people often think of as metal. So there's a number of developments that have had this. This is just our desire to try and be proactive and stop telling people their buildings are too nice for Maumelle. Councilmember Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, even before I was elected the first time, I attended almost every city council meeting. I was a regular fixture here. And one of the common threads that I always saw and that I do support very strongly is we monitor the aesthetics in our community. And one of the things is we don't want metal siding buildings in our town, okay? After given some time, they're going to start looking bad. It's just the nature of the beast. So we just always had that rule. And I don't want any architectural metal siding in our town. Use brick or go to Little Rock, you know? So.
Got you. And maybe what would be helpful for the next meeting is if we brought in some of the architectural metal. It's actually, because we're on the same page wanting high quality materials. When people told me architectural metal, I pictured metal buildings, tin, this really cheap looking stuff. A lot of times this is being used in new, modern, state-of-the-art buildings as accent pieces that really kind of make things look nice. So maybe we could bring in some pictures for the next meeting, and if we have some, we can actually bring that in and you could see it. Because I agree, one of the things that we do like is some of the high standards that we like. And your thoughts are exactly what mine were the first time someone said, do we want metal buildings in Maumelle? And I was like, no, thank you.
Well, if you could further explain it to us and present pictures and maybe even scrap pieces of these metals. So
I bet we can do that. Yes, sir. That's a good idea. I apologize for not having that done today. That would have made more sense. But that's why you're here.
Yeah.
To whip us into shape. Councilmember Gardner?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank y'all for, I know planning has worked on this, and Mayor, you have as well. I think this is a sorely needed update to our code. I've attended a lot of planning commissions meetings since I've been elected to the council, and one of the things I thought was interesting, Councilmember Mosley, I believe you were there for this one, there was a center proposed on Country Club Parkway, not the one that we just did, but it was across the entrance to the country club, and it was one of the nicest buildings that I had seen proposed, and it was using architectural metal, and it had to go through this whole waiver process to get approved because we didn't allow that in Maumelle. Yet it was one of the nicest buildings I had seen proposed to, from a commercial standpoint, to be in our city. So I think this is a great update to our code. And if you want some examples of this, drive down Highway 10 in Little Rock. I know you said we could go to Little Rock and look for this. There are some stunning buildings that have been built further out down Highway 10 using architectural metal. And so it's not, I grew up in a small town. We have a lot of sheet metal commercial buildings. This is not what that's about. This is completely different, and this will be a good update so that applicants don't have to go through the waiver process to get approved to use these higher quality construction materials. And as the mayor said, it's interesting, we turn away people because their buildings are too nice and our code requires them to use something less appealing. So this is a good update. So thank y'all for bringing this.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams.
And I agree with that. And I think that when we went up to Northwest Arkansas, we saw a lot of this architectural metal and these up-and-coming communities that are using these more modern designs, and it was just beautiful. And I agree. I think the update is it's time.
A lot of times you see them for exterior trusses or as accent pieces. and not the main building. But yeah, you're right, we did see some of that there.
And I do think that bringing some pictures of those types of things would help matters.
It seems like a no-brainer. I wonder why I didn't think of it before. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I've been sitting in a lot of those same planning commission meetings as Mr. Gardner, and it does appear that we've got expertise on the planning commission and with our planning director to determine what would be high quality. I was looking in this ordinance for the ability for them to be, to approve it on a discretionary basis. And I thought I saw that there in that page 2 where the underline is under item 2, but I'm not sure if that's giving them that ability or not. But I would like it. I would be more favorable to it if it did allow them to be discretionary based on what was presented to them. Says may cover no more than 20% of any facade or up to 30% if approved by the Planning Commission. I'm not sure if.
I'll leave that question to the city attorney. The way I read that is it's a max 20%, but it's up to 30 if the Planning Commission approves. So the Planning Commission approval would be the extra up to 10%.
Oh, okay. So it's not the discretion I thought I was reading. So
that is how I understood it as well. That it would be 20% would be fairly standard, but if there was some unusual reason why they were doing something creative that 30% looked better, they would have that ability to approve a little extra.
Okay, because yeah, I'm not an expert at all in any of this, and I'm not sure if some things may look better than others. So I don't know. I'll think about this one. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll bring some forms in. Also to point out, it does say prefab steel panels and metal siding when used as the primary sheathing of the facade is prohibited under these conditions there. And then it kind of carves out an exemption for this other stuff. We'll bring in some pictures and maybe even some samples of some of that metal so that y'all can see what's going on. Thank you. Any additional discussion on this, on Ordinance 1049? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is ward redistricting discussion. For those that don't know, there was a census recently. One of the things that a census gives us the opportunity to do is redistrict so that we're rebalancing some of the wards. When, there's multiple different ways that we can go about this process. My original goal was just to have Metro Plan submit a proposal, bring it to the council, and have some discussion. There's a couple issues with that, and it's nothing to do with Metro Plan. It has more to do with their knowledge of Maumelle. And so I sat down with Jason Lyon, our planner too, who also does GIS, and we now have the capabilities to do that stuff in-house. We just started playing with different scenarios. One of the things that came up very quickly when redrawing lines is trying to determine what the city's priority would be. So if you take, for example, let's go and minimize changes, the least amount of changes possible, then that's going to draw you a different map than if you say something like, let's prioritize keeping communities of interest in the same ward. So that'd be Maumelle Valley in the same ward, or Country Club of Arkansas in the same ward. And so depending on what these factors are and the way you're prioritizing it, you can draw radically different maps. What I'm suggesting is one of two methods, and I really want y'all's input on this, and if you think my two options are not worth it, let's come up with something else. One of the options is we can hold a workshop where the council kind of gives a public meeting where the council is able to give input on some of the things that we think should be the priority when redistricting. If that's the case, then we can go back with those list of priorities, and we can have a whole list of what different people say you should consider, don't consider other advice is the exact opposite, don't consider this, consider this. We can take those priorities and come back with a map to present to the council or to the workshop to then serve as the launching platform. I think that's one method of doing it. Another method is if we, the city, takes several different stabs at it and present 3 or so different maps that have sort of been based on different priorities. And then use those as a launching ground to talk about. So I really want to just open the floor for input on what y'all think is the best idea or way that we can go about it. If one of those 2 options works, great. If not, let's talk about it. Not everyone at once. Councilmember Saunders.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we have a time constraint on this to make this decision?
There is. I don't know what that is.
It seems like there is.
So normally, it would have been done by now, except the census results are only just now coming out, right? And so typically, the census results would have come out much earlier than they have. It's why the legislative session is still in operation as the well, I don't know if they decided on a congressional ward map, okay, or a congressional district map. That's why the Arkansas legislature had to recess and then come back to discuss it. So the whole timeline is thrown off. City attorney's free to chime in if you have an answer. I would assume that we'd need the lines to be redrawn well in advance of the opening of the filing period for the next election, which I believe is next July. And so when I say well in advance, enough time that people could decide whether they want to run or not. This can be a very long and drawn-out process, or it can be fairly concise. I just think it's important enough to bring it to the council's attention and get input before we spend a tremendous amount of time. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I think one of the considerations is, and in fact, I saw a letter in some of these letters here consistent with this is we need to do it in such a way as it does not disrupt the representation, the current representation of those various wards. In other words, I wouldn't want to see a council member displaced that has more time on their thing just by redistricting.
And that's one of those factors that we want council's input. So some factors would say, no, you don't want to use incumbent protection as a criteria. Others would say you do, and there's good arguments for both sides. And so we're running into issues where it would be a lot more helpful at the outset if we knew how to whether that was the priority that everyone kind of agreed on or whether that was not, what happens if you have to split up a subdivision into 2 wards versus that, so what is the give and take of these priorities and really kind of nailing down what those priorities are. And I'll tell you, I don't want to just unilaterally present a proposal that violates some of these principles without knowing what the council's priorities are. So again, I think there's at least 2. The 2 that I'm suggesting is, 1, we have a workshop, we sit together, we get a list of all these priorities, we kind of work on fleshing them out, add to that list, subtract, prioritize them, and then we can make a proposal that sort of follows that. Number 1 important thing is this, number 2 is this, number 3 is that. It may not be that clear, but that would be one way of doing it. Alternatively, we can just throw out 3 different, or 2 or 4, 3 sounds like a nice number, of different alternatives with the rules that were used to create that. So keep communities of interest together, try and use all census blocks, try and mirror them to as much as possible, minimizing changes. Some may have a lot of changes, but make more sense. Some, and so knowing the right way to do that is really where we're looking at guidance. So those 2 options, and third option to throw out there would just be to create a task force or committee, throw in council members, third parties, residents, anybody that wants to, or those that are appointed, and just have a powwow of a time. fourth option. So the idea of kind of sitting down together, having a workshop, coming up with some priorities, we'll probably load you with some information beforehand of what people say to consider or what not to consider, flesh that out. And then we could we can put together a map that the council can change afterward, but it would be that starting foundation that we've built based on that. Okay. Councilmember Gardner?
Yes, I think the workshop idea is a good path to go down and to have community involvement in what we're trying to do. I guess my concern is that I'm not comfortable with I would not be comfortable knowing the process for how those lines should be redrawn and how they should be recalculated and all that. So are you thinking leave that in-house with our in-house staff that we have available, or go back to Metro Plan with our ideas from this workshop as to how we would redraw it? I'm not one that is comfortable redrawing lines because I think it looks pretty and we should go that way.
So there's different ways for that workshop that can go. You can have the workshop try and draw the lines themselves and start saying, well, what about this block or this census block? Let's trade this one out and add it over here. Long story short, wards 1 and 2 have to lose geographic regions. Wards 4 and 3 have to add geographic regions, so or precincts or area, because wards 1 and 2 have grown at a greater rate than wards 3 and 4. So that means there's certain areas. If we used a rule that heavily emphasized maintaining the current wards to the extent we can, there's going to be some areas and some neighborhoods that y'all represent on this side that will now be represented by this side. So we can either take that list of criteria and priorities and give that to Metro Plan, or perhaps even better is work on it in-house and then present that to the council. And one of the issues that I ran into with Metro Plan has nothing to do with them. It's where we know what that area is versus what they're looking at, right? And so, and I could get as complex here as you want. So the way some of the census blocks work, someone may take Stone Ledge, for example, as a street and say, well, that's all kind of one nature, and to the extent possible, we want all of Stone Ledge to be in the same ward. Well, a lot of the census blocks are going to run along Stone Ledge and mean that Stone Ledge is actually in the same census block as some of the area around Maumelle Valley, but on the inner Odom, and it wraps in Ridgeview and well, if you're trying to keep Stone Ledge in the same area so that Stone Ledge has a more effective say and representation, you'd want them to be together. Well, when you give that information to Metro Plan, they don't have the knowledge of those areas to know that the homes in Stone Ledge maybe are a certain type, and you want to keep them with that type so that they can have fair representation. So we can do it either way. I think we lose some of the fine tuning going to Metro Plan. On the other hand, I like it because then if people don't like it, it's not blamed on me or city staff. My understanding is for the last census, Metro Plan recommended something. I don't know what went up, so I can give Metro Plan the priorities, and we could say, well, these are the priorities that we think we need to keep, get a map, have a nice package, present it to y'all in such a way that didn't look like I had set some of those priorities on the back end, right? And then have the ability to wash my hands and say, oh, that's what Metro Plan submitted. Which would have been nice to a certain extent. On the other hand, to do it as sort of transparently open and inclusive as we can, that's where we are. So what I'm hearing is leaning toward a workshop where we set the priorities first, and not a workshop following 3 separate alternatives. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, what I'd like to do is just sit down and have a workshop and we just hash it out. If Ward 4 needs some more people, they can creep down into my ward or Zone's ward or whatever. We'll just work it out ourselves. I don't see any need to involve Metro Plan. Why would Metro Plan have anything to do with this?
Well, so the reason Metro Plan did it before is we didn't have GIS capabilities, right? And so the GIS is really awesome in that you can click on a census block and it'll tell you how many people there, and so you can just kind of flip that switch and go, okay, now here's how it would look like. Oh, that has skewed this one too high from the variance, and so we have the capability to do it in-house now. What we're seeking guidance from is the priorities on how to do that. So I think we can do it in-house. We just want the priorities and factors. Sounds like Councilmember Holt.
You know, we all, right now, our wards are all in one area connected. But like we have the two new areas, Pinnacle and Brady, that are not. What if we had an idea where we might have an area across town, an island, if you might say, that's part of our ward, and this one over here, that's part of their ward. In other words, we get to work with people that we don't really know. It's new people, but yet it's part of Ward 4, and that's part of Ward 4, and that's part of Ward. And a little bit confusing, but at the same time, we're more generalized through the city. I know modeled area as everyone else does also, but I don't really know anything about the folks that live in Ward 1. They don't know me either. So I'm just saying, to be able to broaden our concept of who we are and what we represent. Does the ward that we represent really matter that much? Collectively, we represent the city at large.
I think, Madam City Attorney, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the wards have to be contiguous, although I don't know that I don't know that I've ever read that. Maybe I've just assumed that to be the case. It sure make going door to door interesting. We can look into that.
I think we would have to be very careful also when you start, and this is a different issue. We're a city, obviously, it's not as much so on a statewide scale, but when wards start looking like you're reaching out or you're pulling things like that, sometimes that raises issues with people being concerned about you diluting certain gerrymandering, where you might be diluting, certain minority votes or certain social economic votes. So I would have some concerns with getting too unusual with it.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is a workshop. Is there a preference? I'm going to go ahead and just hit roll call, so I won't see if you push the button, just talk. Is there a preference if we're talking about an evening workshop or during the day workshop?
I would think evening would be best for the public to
Okay.
be able to attend.
Is there any particular days of the week that work best?
Or the first and third Mondays of the month out.
Those are, no, they're not. You can do them before or after the council meeting.
Yes, those are out.
I think we would need a lot of guidance through this workshop. That's kind of what I was getting at earlier. I just don't feel qualified to make suggestions as to what we need to do. So I feel like personally, I feel like I would need guidance through this in the form of suggestions on, like you suggested, keeping a community together versus other options. So that's kind of where I was going. If GIS internally can help with that and show us how those numbers work out, I think that's great.
We can also get lists of those things that are commonly considered factors that you don't necessarily think of until you get one. I got a letter recently, and I could pass it on to y'all, from the League of Women Voters that has a really good set of criteria that you should use, some that you shouldn't use, but nonetheless, what it's pointing out is different criteria, and so even if you don't agree completely with where they've drawn the line as to what you should and shouldn't do, it gives you a list of factors. There's others that I've looked into as well, and maybe see if I can't find some other generic articles on that. Okay, I will, have some suggested dates at the next council meeting to bring up. Sounds like.
We'll probably have to take our budget meetings into consideration when making this date as well.
In terms of?
Conflicts.
Oh, yeah, well, either that or all of us will be in one meeting and not the other, or someone can run off to one room, make a motion and a vote, get something passed while everyone's in the other meeting. Yeah, no, very important. And we're still waiting on some more numbers and information so that we can come up with a timeline that we think is reasonable for the budget calendar. Okay, thank you. Economic trends, next agenda item, Councilmember Mazzoni. Already been covered. Next item of business is Resolution 2021-31 regarding surplus property. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, Pulaski County, Arkansas. Resolution number 2021-32, a resolution to approve the disposal of city surplus property.
All right, this is a resolution to dispose of the sanitation truck that has outlived its useful life. Y'all should have a fair amount of information, the property activity form, pictures, estimates on repair, so on, and, oh, let me go to request to speak. If you've hit your button and want to speak, please go ahead and do it here. And this would authorize the sale of that vehicle that Public Works has estimated to be valued at $25,000. And Mr. Hogan is here to answer any questions that you may have. Councilmember Gardner?
Motion to adopt Resolution 2021-32.
I've got a motion and a second for adoption of Resolution 2021-32. Councilmember Mosley?
The only one that ever has questions on these things. Is this our only side lift truck, the one that we usually see coming through the neighborhoods on trash pickup day?
Mr. Hogan, come on down. We had you at the top of the meeting and the tail.
No, this is not the only one.
Okay.
This is one of two sister trucks that were bought at the same time. Truck 21 is, exhausted its time with us, and we got a sanitation truck this year that come out of 2020's budget. It's on the road, and when we put that one in service, this one is the one that's having the most problems that we took out of service. So.
Okay. The new one we put in service, is it identical to this or similar to this?
No, the one that's identical to this is truck 21. Truck 22 is identical to it, but I think the new one we got now, it's a Freightliner.
But it's an automatic lift.
It's automated.
Not manual throwing the trash. Okay. Okay. All right. That's all I've got. Thank you. I did hear that these two, at least one of these sister trucks was a maintenance problem from the get-go. So.
Yeah, we took the worst one that was costing us the most money out of service and took as much from that one to make the other one still serviceable.
Hopefully you found a good brand. Thank you.
Yeah.
You would, your jaw would drop if you knew how quickly these trucks go from being brand new to being in the shop.
Yes. Even brand new ones go to the shop.
Brand new ones in the
Yes.
shop. All right, thank you. We've got a motion second to approve Resolution 2021-32. Is there any additional comments? All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. We'll move on to mayor's comments. Really quickly with the rain, we got hammered over the weekend. I've seen numbers up to over 6.5 inches on Saturday, and it was quite the hammering. It wasn't actually not nearly as bad. We didn't suffer nearly the problems that I thought we would. With the big one being Mountain Valley, I was out there. Finally got to put my work boots to get some mud on them, so I didn't look so white collar. Mike Hogan and I were out there filming video, taking pictures. I was really impressed with city staff who not just that night jumped out and was in the rain sorting things out. We had code enforcement out at some of these locations on Sunday, working with developers to clean up some areas on Sunday, which turned out to be a very manageable task, but isn't always easy to accomplish. So congratulations, Scott, to you and your crew for that sort of stuff. And of course, police was out there blocking off roads, and it was quite a mess. Most interestingly was we didn't see flooding back in the Gables area, Windsor, the soccer fields. I was back there Saturday night, trying to see what was going on. Walk around the back of that area shows that it didn't look like it came close to coming out of that ditch and going up. I wish I would have gone back there behind those buildings that night, but got talking to some residents, and it stopped raining before I could see all the sites. Nonetheless, considering we have a major project going on in that area, was a bit interesting to see. With that, that'll conclude mayor's comments. We'll move on to council member comments. Councilmember Mosley.
I just wanted to ask for clarification, where that street with the mud on it, is that over in the Beaver Creek area? Is that where that's?
No, it wasn't that particular location. It was down on Mountain Valley. We checked out Mike, when we departed that location, I stayed on the side of Mountain Valley, and he went to check out that area and did not see, nothing jumped out to him at that time.
Okay.
I think it stopped raining, I believe, yeah.
Because I went and looked at an area behind Beaver Creek House probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, and there were some yards, but not sodded yet. And I was worried about a large rain really taking a lot of those yards away, but sounds like maybe that wasn't it.
When to be clear, I haven't received any complaints, and then we weren't going through people's backyards in the middle of the night to see how their backyards were being impacted. We were focusing more on the streets and what was visible from the streets, and nothing jumped out to us at that time.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Saunders.
Thank you, Mayor. Back to redistricting, I wonder if it's possible to get Metro Plan to come in when at least, if we only have one workshop, especially then, and have them send somebody down here like a consultant, because they have people that deal with this all the time. And I'm like Councilmember Gardner, I've never really been involved in this process, so it's kind of like I'm trying to recreate the wheel. And if we had someone here with more experience, like a Metro Plan person, we'd have a resource. So I don't know whether they do that or not.
I'm sure Metro Plan would be more than happy to send someone out who's very competent. The individual that I've been talking with does GIS, which is, we've got staff members that do that. A lot of this is policy discussion, not map making. That said, I can reach out to Metro Plan. I think, I don't want to speak for the entity as a whole. I think you'll get some folks that can work with the maps and help you move around, and will ask you how to prioritize them, right? And so they, from what I have seen, are not working on the policy side, that is measuring the criteria to determine how to shift the map around, if that makes sense.
Well, I think that there's other issues too that concern me, and I promise it's not about Ken. This is about all of us. I would hate to see us, just one issue, redistricting such that it takes Michael off the board, because don't we have a state law that says you have to live in your zone?
Yes.
Okay, your ward, I mean. So if we redistrict in the wrong way, we could actually knock people off this board. And we have some new people that need time, you know. So I'd hate to
Great,
see
yes.
anyone.
So,
But it's those kind of issues that I'm not familiar with.
and so it's those kind of issues that in my experience working with Metro Plan, they'll say, these are some of the issues you consider, what's a priority to you?
Right, and if they were at this workshop, we could hear those things. We could hear some of their ideas and experiences,
Okay.
so,
I don't think you're gonna get what you're looking for.
no.
I think they're going to say, do you want us to protect incumbents? And you'll either say yes or no, and then they'll draw a map a different way depending on what you say to that question, if that makes sense.
Okay. Could be.
What we can do, it might be easiest, and I don't mind reaching out to Metro Plan, but we do have several folks here that can work on GIS, and if you're looking at someone to work on the map, drawing lines, as opposed to the policy behind where those lines go, you're gonna get, you know, I don't wanna say map makers, I've got, you know, we've got several people that can work on the GIS to flip the map over, or you can bring in Metro Plan to flip the map over too.
I'm not thinking as much about map making as I am policies and procedures.
Correct.
Things that we might not think of, that could be important, you know, to not only us, but to the citizens too.
I agree. I don't know that that's what you're gonna get by bringing in the Metro Plan GIS guy. You could bring in, I could reach out to Tab Townsell, Executive Director, former Mayor of Conway, to give his advice on it.
Okay.
And
That
so
was
I'm
just
not.
an idea.
Yeah, I see your idea. I think we can meet that idea by giving y'all, there's plenty of articles out there that have a whole list of factors. If, what I'm hearing y'all say is one of the issues is you don't know the issues that you don't know. And so if you had a list that says, here are some factors to consider when drawing those lines, it gives you that foundation to then go, oh, how do we want to handle this? How do we want to prioritize this? And we can get that list to you, and that would just be me and folks hopping on Google and just coming up with some different common priorities, which is what I was doing when we were working on it, and I said, whoa, you know, there's 100 different landmines here. And so I'd rather bring in y'all for priorities. Madam City Attorney?
I did just want to mention, in case you want to look at the statute on redistricting awards for cities of the first class, it's 1443-311. And it's a pretty broad discretion rests with the council. Of course, you know, as I mentioned earlier, there's, you know, extensive case law on if you're redistricting for purposes that are not legitimate purposes. So, you know, the goal is going to be to equalize the population, and then other factors do, of course, come into play as well.
How about this? Why don't, since we'll be setting the date at the next meeting, why don't I work on getting you some information prior to that, as well as something spelled out a little bit more in line with kind of what y'all are talking about. And then we can invite other people, we can hire a consultant, we can do whatever at that point, but you'll have more information in front of you at that time. Will that work, Councilmember Saunders? Okay. Any additional councilmember comments? Madam City Attorney?
I'll just mention briefly, I did get some more information on the opioid settlement. We'll have some agreements to authorize joining in the settlement. The settlement itself is several hundred pages long. I started looking at it today, and so that may have to go to you guys by link in case you want to read several hundred pages of the most legalese document you have ever seen. But, you know, Maumelle is included there as an entity that's covered by it should we decide to join in that. There's some information the municipal league's got a call about it tomorrow. Unfortunately, I'll be in court, so I'm going to have to try to get a recorded copy of that. But we'll have more information coming on that probably very soon.
Thank you. City Clerk comments?
No comment.
Take a peek at the FYI. Metro Plan Board passed a resolution on congressional redistricting, advocating that the MSAs, the metropolitan statistical areas in the state, be kept together during the congressional redistricting. And of course, your sales tax report. With that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. That was the most lackluster motion to adjourn I've heard in a while. I've got a motion, second to adjourn. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. We are adjourned.